Hello and welcome to the NuVasive West Coast Experience Center here in San Diego. This past year has been quite a challenge. The healthcare community has gone through so much. But throughout the pandemic, we never changed our focus to transform surgery, advance care, and change lives. Our teams continue to work very hard to find creative ways to bring disruptive technology to market. I want to share with you what we've been working on virtually here at the NuVasive Innovation event. We have so many exciting additions in our portfolio in cervical, anterior, and posterior procedural solution. And of course, with our enabling technology platform, Pulse. Our commitment remains to be the industry leader in spine innovation. And to do that, we are focused on bringing to you outcome-driven innovation, so that together we can change more life. To tell you more, I would like to introduce Ryan Donahoe.
Thank you, Massimo. Here at NuVasive, innovation is the lifeblood of our organization. Our entire R&D team shares your passion to deliver the best care possible with patient outcomes at the heart of everything that we do. If you look at the past, XLIF was the foundation of our company, and we've applied the key learnings from XLIF to guide us in developing more reproducible procedures. Through the integration of access, instruments, biologics, implants, and of course enabling technology, we strive to deliver unmatched outcomes across a broad and varied set of patient pathologies, surgical approaches, and procedures. Now you fast forward to today, with the increased utilization of enabling technology and the advancements in our implants, our instruments, and our biologic systems, we're addressing challenges we faced for years, creating the ability to plan surgery, to visualize and monitor anatomical structures, to provide patient-specific fixation solutions, and to reconcile outcomes with plans. Now this is all while reducing the radiation exposure to you and your OR staff. We look forward to today. We still have so much more work to do. And it's really not about simply creating the new implant, releasing a new feature or capability with Impulse, but really to bring to the market disruptive technologies that integrate into our procedures that help deliver better outcomes for patients. Because just like you, that is what fuels us each and every day. To provide us with additional detail on how the power of Pulse integrates into our procedures, I'll turn it over to Chris.
The Pulse platform is a continuation of our philosophy of integrating enabling technology to facilitate a better surgery. Regardless of the procedure, Pulse is a spine technology platform that helps you accomplish your surgical objectives with minimized invasiveness, increased efficiency, and reproducibility. One platform with radiation reduction, imaging, rod bending, navigation, intraoperative neuromonitoring, and integrated global alignment assessments. To show you Pulse in action, here's Kara with Dr. Paul Holman to showcase utilizing Pulse throughout an XLIF procedure.
Hi, Dr. Holman.
Hey, Kara.
Thanks so much for joining us out here in San Diego to talk about the exciting launch of Pulse. So we just got out of the lab where you performed an XLIF and PERC screws utilizing the Pulse platform and Siemens CO spin. That is a procedure that you do frequently today back home at Houston Methodist, but obviously not with the Pulse platform. So I'd love to walk through what that procedure was like utilizing Pulse and how it differs from what you're doing today.
Typically, we're doing the XLIF with regular 2D imaging, And then to place our screws, we're going to use a cone beam CT type technology. So there's two intraoperative imaging systems right there. And if we want to do any type of multi-level percutaneous procedure or an expandable, we might have to go from our cone beam back to a 2D C-arm. So a lot of transfer of technology. And then obviously we have our clinical specialists that are watching our neuromonitoring. We typically also use an in-house person that's doing more sophisticated things for complicated procedures. So we have a lot of technology, and it really kind of adds up. The space gets cannibalized pretty quickly with all of those things in one room. I feel pretty lucky that we have large operating rooms, but even in a large room, having all of those things kind of cannibalizes some of the space available.
I can imagine that is valuable real estate in the operating room. So explain to us a little bit about the difference in footprint from utilizing Pulse and CO Spin today.
Pulse is just not a navigation system, it's a complete intraoperative platform. And so the thing that I really noticed first off was you have all of this technology and it's put inside one system, it's in one machine. So I really feel like in tight quarters, if you're working in a small operating room, Pulse is going to free up some of that space. So I really think that's an important differentiator.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into the procedure. One of the great things about Pulse is its utility throughout the entire procedure. So what were some of the applications you were able to utilize before even cutting skin, kind of in that pre-surgery stage?
I think for a degenerative surgeon, if you haven't gotten those long scoliosis type x-rays to measure your pelvic incidence, the stitching feature, the IGA feature, will allow us to get those numbers in the operating room so we can quickly get an idea of what our PI to LL mismatch is. And there's new research out now that shows that most people need about 35 degrees of lordosis from L4 to S1. So if you're doing a 1 or 2 level case, you know how much lordosis you need, and that can help you if you're going to use an inner body with 15 degrees or 20 degrees. So I think that upfront planning and planning on the fly is a nice feature of the IGA portion of the whole platform.
Yeah. So if you wanted to do that today, get a long film and measure your pelvic parameters, how would you do that with your systems that are available?
So we do have a long cassette wireless solution, but that is a completely separate intraoperative imaging modality. So we talked about 2D C-arm, cone beam CT, and so now you're adding a whole third system that needs to be brought in and out of the operating room. So again, that definitely takes time. So by having those capabilities built into this Pulse platform, it's just going to improve our operative efficiency.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into the meat of the procedure. What are some of the applications that you utilize in Pulse for the inner body portion?
During the XLIF portion of the procedure, having the neural monitoring front and center on that screen, typically our screen would be kind of in the corner of the room, so we all know the familiar auditory cues of the system, knowing when we're going through the psoas muscle, but having those numbers so the rep doesn't have to call those out, I think that really streamlines the targeting.
I think as a surgeon, you're so good at taking all of this information from all over the operating room and putting it together in your head, but what we wanted to try and do is take all of that and actually put it front row and center on the Pulse platform for you, so glad that came across.
Yeah, and I think it's also a really nice feature that the Pulse is built in with the COS platform. So if we want to do navigation and 2D imaging at the same time, again, we eliminate that transfer of systems in the room. We don't have to go back and forth because that takes time. I think the thing that really comes to the forefront is less ray. We all know that XLIF is a very fluoroscopically dependent procedure. So the magic of the procedure is accessing the disc laterally and getting a good inner body distraction for indirect decompression. So to do that well, we use a lot of fluoro shots. So less ray is an amazing part of the platform that's going to cut down on our radiation exposure by about 80%. So we're able to use the COS imaging platform in the 2D mode and use the less ray function to be able to do the procedure and minimize our radiation exposure.
So let's talk about fixation. So obviously today you're utilizing navigation to place your screws with other navigation systems. How were you able to utilize the entire Pulse platform and all of the different applications that are inclusive of that for your fixation?
So I think for fixation, obviously navigation has been really a game changer. there are specific cases where you're putting in a pedicle screw into a small pedicle where even if you have navigation, you want to make sure that there's no clinically relevant breach. We do use outside-in techniques, things of that nature. So having the ability to stimulate your screws as you insert them and make sure that there's no low amplitude on the stimulation, knowing that there's no clinically significant breach, I think that's a huge advantage. The other thing is I'm in academics and I teach people how to use navigation. One of the things that really kind of bothers people sometimes is what we call elastic deformation. So as you're putting in a screw and you're watching the screen, you're seeing the trajectory move because you're deforming the location of the spine relative to the frame. So I think that the engineers did a really good job from a software perspective, and they've dampened some of that. So I really feel like it's a very smooth transition. The other thing that navigation brings to the table, there's a lot of value, but line of sight is one of the unsolved problems. And so I was really pleased to see that even if you have multiple trackers that are being exposed to the camera, the pulse system will only pick up the one that's closest to the reference frame. So, often during a case, I'm telling someone to flip over an instrument because it's trying to track two things at once. So with pulse, that's a huge benefit that, you can kind of leave instruments and not worry about line of sight variations.
And speaking of arrays, how does the patient array of the Pulse platform compare to other competitive systems you're using today?
It's smaller. And so one of the things that we know about navigation is if you screw up the reference frame, if your fixation is inadequate or you bump the frame, then you have to take another scan. So I think NuVasive has done a really good job kind of shrinking down the footprint of those trackers and being able to, let's say you're doing a T10 to the pelvis and you're navigating the T10 screws where the reference frame is attached via a spinous process clamp. Because the trackers are smaller, I think you have less line of sight problems.
Yeah, makes complete sense. So let's talk about the end of the procedure. So you were able to place your rod and close. What applications of the Pulse platform did you utilize for that portion of the procedure?
Well, I think it's no secret that Bandini has really been a really transformative technology. I think Dr. Uribe has taught me that doing minimally invasive scoliosis surgery is possible. We're all able to put in screws and the navigation helps us, but really one of the things that nobody talks about is how do you pass the rod. So by using the IGA platform with Bandini, we can minimize the number of passes and that cuts down on soft tissue trauma. And it also helps to potentially prevent screw pullout. And so we can also use the Bandini system if we want to do some of the correction with the rod. We can alter the shape of the rod. We can alter it in the coronal plane because we don't necessarily want to have coronal bends. We want to straighten the spine out in the coronal plane. So I think Bandini has really been a game changer when it comes to trying to push the limits of minimally invasive deformity correction.
Well, thanks so much for walking us through that. It's great to see that you were able to utilize Pulse throughout every single stage of your procedure. So outside of clinical benefits, we can switch gears here a little bit. I know that you are extremely passionate about adopting Pulse and you're looking to hopefully purchase here in the near future. So what are some of the reasons that has made you so passionate about adopting that platform outside of just the clinical benefits we walked through?
Well, I think the thing that people need to realize is that Pulse is really a whole platform. It is really the iPhone of spine surgery. So I think we talk a lot now about procedural efficiency, and really that's what NuVasive kind of built XLIF. They had an idea, but it wasn't just an implant, it was a whole procedural solution. And so I'm really passionate about Pulse because all of the things that I need to accomplish, whether it's a one-level fusion or a multi-level complex fusion, are built into this system. And so I think it's going to improve outcomes and it's going to improve efficiencies in the operating room, which are still a bit of a challenge.
Now, we know that you are one of the decision makers for purchasing a Pulse system at your hospital, but not the only one. The hospital leadership is very much involved in that decision.
Well, when new technology comes along, I think it's our job as spine surgeons to really vet it out. And we all know that healthcare costs are an issue. So if I'm going to go to bat with my hospital and say, this is something that I see as valuable, I want you to spend the money on because we're going to have a great return on our investment, I think Pulse is definitely one of those technologies. So I think, again, improving procedural efficiency, operating room time is expensive. And so if we can cut down on our operative time, so whether you're doing things in the lateral position, putting in lateral screws, having all of this technology in one box, being able to use one intraoperative imaging platform, just making everything more efficient, that's where I really see the value. And so I feel very passionate and very comfortable going to my leadership team at Houston Methodist and saying, this is something that we need. And the other thing is I'm in the middle of my career, so we're always looking for new talent. We need to expand our clinical team at Houston Methodist. So if I was a young surgeon and I wanted to do minimally invasive surgery, I'm looking at a hospital that has Pulse as being a differentiator, because I want to be able to use this technology, I want to cut down on my radiation exposure, and I want to be able to feel comfortable transitioning into my practice that I'm not going to have misplaced screws, I'm going to cut down on radiation exposure, I'm going to get the outcome that I want. And so I really told them that I felt that this was something that could help to attract surgeons to our practice.
Absolutely, it really does help with that reproducibility of the procedure, no matter who you are, if you're newer, if you've been at the hospital for a long time. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Holman. And with that, we're going to pass it off to a few other surgeons who are going to talk about why Pulse is important to their practice.
For me, it all begins and ends with accuracy when it comes to image-guided navigation in the operating room. The technology platform that Pulse is as well is very exciting. I think the ability to use all of the different innovative modules, whether it's IGA or Bendini or LessRay or neuromonitoring, whatever the case may be, I think it's exciting to be used as a springboard for the future, whereas all the other navigation platforms will likely just be standing still.
For the surgeons, I think the versatility is the most important part. Really, this Pulse platform can cater to all types of surgeons that utilize different techniques and have different types of practices. For bigger deformity cases, there's really the advantage of using IGA, Bendini, and for minimally invasive surgeons, the navigation is definitely going to be a true advantage. And everyone is going to benefit from the LessRay. And I think for me, that's probably one of the most important benefits, because over time we get such a large amount of radiation exposure as surgeons. The patients get the exposure, the staff, and we can really, really change the future with surgery and the ability to take care of our patients.
I'm so excited for the introduction of Pulse, a unified platform that's going to streamline intraoperative workflows and enable data collection possibilities that have never before been available. For my practice, one of the most exciting features is the intraoperative navigation platform. Navigation has played such an important role in my practice over the past 2 years, from everything from placing percutaneous instrumentation to increasingly during complex revision surgeries, helping me stay oriented, facilitating osteotomies, and even decompressions. I can't wait to see Pulse in the operating room and to see all the ways that it enables us to better take care of patients.
I'm really excited to use Pulse. Navigation has always been a major part of my minimally invasive spine practice. I recently had a baby, and that's put an increased premium on efficiency and safety in my operating room. I really want to get home as quickly as I can at the end of the day, and being able to accurately and quickly place percutaneous screws using navigation has always helped me do that. But also, the increased safety, decreasing the radiation exposure to myself, and also decreasing radiation exposure to my staff and to the patient, I've always seen as a great benefit.
I had the opportunity to evaluate the Pulse system over the last 4 weeks as one of the first surgeons in Europe, and I would like to share my experience with you. To my opinion, the Pulse system is a game changer. It has really cool features that help a spine surgeon and facilitate the whole setting in the OR. The navigation was really accurate, but Pulse is sincerely more than a navigation system. Bendini made rod contouring in demanding cases a piece of cake, and the stitching and LessRay functions added value on the system and reduced radiation exposure for both surgeon and patient. The interaction between Pulse and the imaging unit was really good, and the neuromonitoring was really helpful in adult and pediatric deformity cases. I have to say I'm keen to apply all these features in future surgeries and can't wait for future upgrades.
All right, thank you very much for coming down here, Dr. Varavagu. Always a pleasure to see you. You've gotten to know our team and you've been working on this project for a while. You've seen behind the curtains working with the development group. I'm interested to understand why have you chosen to work with NuVasive all these years?
What I've found is that as we progress in a relatively unknown world, spine surgery doesn't have a lot of evidence-based medicine. We're just developing that. I've found that NuVasive is very nimble and agile in understanding those requirements and being able to build solutions that help patients within those constraints. And that for me is very exciting because spine surgery today is not going to be spine surgery 10 years from now. And if we're not a part of a group that's thinking about how to make the right turns along the way, I think we'll be in a situation where it'll be challenging to provide the right type of treatments for our patients.
So as you think about spine surgery continuing to evolve and adapt to those changing dynamics, I instantly started thinking about the Pulse project and the genesis of Pulse. What about that project and the platform really appealed to you?
Yeah, so I'm glad you used the word platform because when I think about Pulse, I think about a really big team that all of these team members have separate skill sets and bring together an ecosystem. And that's really important to me because when I think about how to deliver care to my patients, I want to ensure that it's safe, effective, and accurate. In order to do that, I think we have to move beyond the traditional navigation systems, beyond the traditional neuromonitoring systems, and use these two different types of technologies, and in the case of Pulse, multiple other types of technologies, to bring together a procedure that's very safe, reproducible, and effective. And I think that ecosystem is actually what excites me the most, because when I speak to somebody on the Pulse team, they're always thinking about their area of expertise, like for example, accuracy and navigation. But they're also thinking about redundancy. If my navigation fails, how can I ensure that the surgeon is doing what they intend to do? Can we use neuromonitoring? Can we use other systems that ensure redundancy and safety? And that's really exciting to me because people here on the Pulse team are thinking well beyond any individual silo of technology.
Yeah, and you know, thinking about that evolution and development, especially last year, kind of unprecedented times, a lot of the work had to be done virtually. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience in this virtual environment?
Happy to. You know, hats off to the NuVasive team. They did a very, very good job of making sure that they kept everything moving forward that they could. So we had, thanks to some of the technology in the new building here at NuVasive, we had the ability to use remote cameras to run remote labs, and you know there were a limited number of people allowed in the lab, and they respected that and ensured that people were safe, but then we're also able to test the protocols that we developed. We would send things back and forth by FedEx. At some point I had 5 pointer probes in my office, all 3D printed, which was really exciting, truthfully, to be able to provide feedback over the wire. And essentially, I think through this period, NuVasive decided to embrace it, at least from my opinion. You know, NuVasive tried to embrace it and say, listen, if we are going to make progress in these challenging situations, how are we going to do it? And does this unlock some possibility to expand progress in the future? And I think, you know, this was a challenging time to get going during the year of COVID, but everybody was safe and effective, and we made real progress. And as a result, a lot of exciting things to come this year.
For the audience and the people we're talking to here, can you help us understand how does this translate to you? What does the platform enable you to do, and how does it impact your practice?
Yeah, so I think everybody in developing the Pulse ecosystem had the surgeon in mind. And the reason is because if the surgeon spends so much time thinking about their individual patient, that patient that's in front of them, they've spent a tremendous amount of time understanding what they think is a right procedure or right solution to the patient's ailments. And as a result, NuVasive has said, how do we empower that decision and ensure that they can execute whatever it is they think is necessary for that specific patient in front of them today? And I think that's the exciting part about Pulse, is that it attempts, and very successfully so, to provide the technology that enables a surgeon to accomplish their goals. Whether that's in one position or another, whether it's anterior column or not, whether it uses assistive technologies or not, it is a platform that allows any surgeon to pick and choose what they need in order to accomplish a goal. And you know, certain parts of it are all designed to work together. And maybe the surgeon finds that helpful. Maybe they decide that that's not necessary, but it's something that the surgeon will be able to use for the patient that's in front of them, because that is the closest thing to helping a patient feel better. The surgeon-patient relationship, understanding what the problem is and how that surgeon's going to help. And Pulse is there to make that relationship possible. And I think that's the exciting part about it.
So a lot of the audience and people listening in want to understand how can Pulse be used in surgery, and given your experience with the technology, I'm interested to understand how do you go about deploying and integrating the different tools within Pulse into the OR?
So as we think about Pulse and an ecosystem, there are many different technologies that are included in this system, and many more in the future, I'm sure. But if we just take a few, navigation, neuromonitoring, planning, intraoperative imaging like LessRay, these are the technologies that start to speak to one another. The reason it's important to integrate them is because what if it were easier and more efficient and safer for the surgeon to really just focus on the job at hand? For example, if you're doing something like placing a pedicle screw, your goal is to make sure that screw achieves adequate fixation and takes the path that you want it to take, avoiding critical neurostructures, ensuring that its end destination is where you had planned it to be. If a navigation system can tell you both from an image optical system that the screw trajectory is accurate, and from a neuromonitoring that you're not entering the canal or the foramen, you have redundancy and safety. And that requires the left hand to talk to the right hand to give you a single image that tells you that what you're doing is safe. That's just one example of why it's so important to have Pulse all integrated.
That's a great point. When you talk about seeing the different technologies work together to help facilitate the job, I know we've talked about in the past too, thinking about your deformity population and the patients you're seeing and treating. How do you go about reconciling a preoperative plan intraoperatively with a platform like Pulse? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, so if we're thinking about a deformity patient, this is a very good example of where Pulse can be very helpful. If you have a preoperative plan, say for example the patient has sagittal imbalance for one reason or another, and you've decided that you need to do a multi-level anterior column reconstruction to achieve a certain amount of lumbar lordosis or a 3-column osteotomy, and that's your preoperative plan. Intraoperatively, you perform all of that, and then you want to know, did we get to what we need to get to? Did we restore the values that we thought were age appropriate for this patient that would help them feel better? Well, intraoperatively, you could take a LessRay image and you can actually compare your preoperative plan to your intraoperative image and see if you've met target. And you can adjust, and you can use a Bendini system to help you. You can use the intraoperative LessRay system to see if you need to extend an osteotomy or do another one, or adjust the compression in one place or another. So many different interventions that you can do to ensure that you achieve what you thought you needed to make this patient feel better.
Absolutely, and it's really leveraging the different pieces of technology within Pulse to help address whatever the specific clinical challenge is or question that you have as you're operating on that patient. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Veeravagu. Appreciate taking the time to talk to you about Pulse today. And with that, we'll transition back to Massimo.
The Pulse platform is clearly the future of the operating room. It is a platform that will grow and adapt to future technologies to better support you, and we are just getting started. We will change the future of spine surgery together when we pair industry leader procedure with the latest in enabling technology. Now, let's talk about our latest innovation in cervical with Mary.
As the leader in spine technology innovation, NuVasive is committed to procedurally integrated solutions that improve patient outcomes. The new NuVasive C360 portfolio, encompassing anterior cervical fusion, posterior cervical fusion, and now cervical disc replacement, demonstrates not only NuVasive's commitment, but our focus on improving cervical spine surgery. NuVasive has worked with a team of world-renowned thought leaders to assess the persistent challenges of cervical spine surgery: dysphagia, malalignment, adjacent level ossification, elegant posterior solutions for crossing the junction, and now has solutions to provide more choice to surgeons as they treat their patients. With the introduction of ACP, our market-leading AMS technology, and our recent acquisition of the Simplify cervical disc, we've transformed our C360 cervical portfolio into a best-in-class, comprehensive solution to meet the needs of all clinical pathologies in the anterior cervical spine. We have the thinnest and most versatile plate system on the market in ACP. When combined with the NuVasive AMS interbody portfolio of Porous PEEK and Modulus cervical, we are very excited to now offer the most clinically effective technology in the cTDR market with the Simplify cervical disc. With the highest rates of overall success at both 1 and 2 levels, this technology will truly transform care and change patient lives. Up next in our innovation pipeline is Reline Cervical. This system is being designed to handle the most complex pathologies, to provide the best solutions for crossing the junctions, and to seamlessly tie into the Reline portfolio. Understanding the criticality of enabling technology with these complex procedures, Reline Cervical will be launched with NavS instruments and will be integrated with the Pulse platform.
The NuVasive Modulus interbody has a wide array of angles and sizes that really helped to achieve that similar end plate apposition that I was actually very happy with. The ACP plate is also an excellent part of the system where we can do very complex revision cases, and whereas previously we may have had to remove a plate, here we have a plate system that has the option of the smallest and has the thinnest plate on the market, with a very wide array of screw angulation and size options. We often talk about game changers, and we use that term loosely, but when you have a technology that allows you to do something that previously would have required more extensive dissection or more time, and now you can do it safely in a shorter period of time, more efficiently, and just as effectively, I think that's been a game changer, certainly a game changer in my practice.
Mary alluded to our newest investment in our cervical portfolio, the Simplify disc. As you can see, we have an overall commitment to bringing market-leading clinical solutions to the cervical spine, whether organic or inorganic. And that's exactly what led us to the most clinically effective cervical disc on the market, with the highest rate overall success for both 1 and 2 levels. Simplify is a company we've been watching for quite some time now, as cTDR has been a gap in our portfolio, and Simplify is truly differentiated in the market. First, the radiologic design. The disc, uniquely comprised of PEEK and ceramic material, allows for enhanced visualization through MRI compared to alternative devices. Second, Simplify includes a 4mm disc height option, the lowest disc height in the market, and closely matches the native disc height of a wide range of patients. Lastly, physiologic motion. The proprietary disc design provides unique articulation, which allows for a variable center of rotation for each treated level and is designed to closely mimic the motion dynamics of a natural spine segment. We've been impressed with the technology, but we've also been impressed with the Simplify team. We're happy to have them part of the NuVa team, and I'm super excited about what we can do in the cervical segment together. To tell you more about the extensive amount of clinical data around Simplify, here's Dr. Korig.
Simplify is a modern generation of disc that has recently been FDA approved for both 1 and 2 levels. It's only one of 3 discs approved for 2-level design. It really is truly a unique disc, and it's unique from several aspects, both biomechanical and biomaterials. From biomaterials perspective, it's a PEEK on ceramic disc, and so it has very positive imaging characteristics on an MRI. There's very little artifact on the MRI, and you're able to kind of visualize not just adjacent levels, but also index levels as well. And then also from the perspective on on plain X-rays, it is a disc that doesn't have a big profile, and it's something that the patients are very interested in seeing. From the perspective of its biomechanics, it also has unique biomechanics in that it has a mobile core with a retention ring, and it also goes down to the smallest size that we've seen in artificial discs, which is down to 4 millimeters, which allows for better anatomic fit to the patients. It's actually ease of application, cuts down on distraction, and is much more like a standard ACDF procedure, as easy as any, certainly as any of the artificial discs that I've put in. The characteristics have translated into good evidence basis as well, because the trial results for both 1 and 2 levels have been amongst the most positive of all the artificial disc trials that we've seen. So there's a firm evidence basis with level 1 data. As I look back on the kaleidoscope of discs that we've done over the past 20 years, I see it as a modern generation disc with modern biomaterials, positive imaging characteristics, and it's a disc that I'm proud to be able to offer to my patients and put in on a regular basis. I'll throw it back to Albert, but thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
The simplified disc, the recent launch of ACP, and our upcoming launch of Reline Cervical round out our newest addition to the C360 portfolio. With these 3 market-leading technologies, we cover all subsegments of cervical spine surgery, and we can't wait to get these technologies in your hands. And now I'll pass it over to Brad, who'll talk about the latest innovation in thoracolumbar.
After working on products for almost 10 years at NuVasive, I can tell you I've never been more excited about the innovation roadmap we have coming today. Regardless if you choose an anterior or posterior approach, partnering with NuVasive will allow you to have the most robust and comprehensive procedural platform in all of spine. Our TL Procedures team is relentlessly pursuing innovation in both our anterior and posterior approaches and procedural platforms. As you know, education is in our DNA, and partnering with surgeons like you allow us to provide the best procedural platforms for you to choose for your patient and their pathology. We're able to validate these procedures over time and also help inform and fuel our future investments in innovation in our procedural pipeline. When you pair what we have coming on our interbody space with our best-in-class access, instrumentation, and education platforms, you truly have a robust and comprehensive platform to use at your disposal. And with that, I'll pass it over to Jeff to talk about the advancements coming in a little more detail in our posterior portfolio.
Thanks, Brad. TL Posterior has been making strides in developing a portfolio that offers access through open and less invasive approaches, comprehensive fixation through the Reline portfolio, and a range of interbody selections, all enabled by technologies in the new Pulse platform. We are confident in the work we've done to provide you these solutions across the posterior spine. With that, I'm excited to share more about our latest interbody offerings in advanced material science. Just as we did with Modulus, we will be launching a comprehensive posterior portfolio of Porous PEEK implants in Cohere TLIF-A and O. With its porous surface technology, Porous PEEK generates stronger integration through bony ingrowth in comparison to smooth PEEK, while the radiolucent PEEK composition enables clear radiographic visualization on a variety of different imaging modalities. Both systems will offer intuitive and procedurally integrated instrumentation as a complement to each of these platforms to further enhance their usability. With the launch of Cohere TLIF, it gives NuVasive the unique advantage as being the only company that can offer a Porous PEEK or 3D printed porous titanium solution. To hear from one of our surgeons on the Porous PEEK technology, here's Dr. Frank Phillips.
I was first introduced to Porous PEEK when the technology was being developed by a group of material scientists. This technology was really science-driven and leveraged the advantages of an integrated porous surface in terms of both bone on-growth and ingrowth, as well as the biomechanical advantages and obvious radiologic advantages PEEK has over metallic implants. I felt that this technology really addressed most surgeons' needs in terms of an interbody device. Given that this technology was driven by scientists, There's a wealth of preclinical data confirming the osteogenic capabilities of Porous PEEK that actually compare favorably to smooth PEEK or smooth metal, as well as surface etched or so-called nanometallic implants. We wanted to study this in a challenging environment and looked at 3 and 4 level ACDFs, a situation where fusion's historically been difficult to achieve and often results in the need for supplemental posterior instrumentation. We've put together a series of almost 50 cases of 3 and 4 level ACDFs using the Cohere implant with relatively simple biologics, and have shown a 98% fusion rate in what I would consider a very challenging environment. I think this speaks to the power of the Porous PEEK as a surface in promoting fusion. So the system leverages all of the advantages of PEEK and combine it with a porous surface architecture shown to encourage bone in and on growth. Cohere also allows for optimal radiographic assessment of fusion, which can be extremely challenging, almost to the point of being impossible with metallic implants, even with advanced imaging. Cohere TLIF-O and TLIF-A have been really well developed. They're very intuitive, easy to use, and in my hands have allowed for very accurate, reliable, and reproducible placement of the cages.
Ultimately, if you believe in a product and wholeheartedly you can tell people, hey, this is what I would use for my mom or my family or myself, I think that's the most important decision as clinicians for us, is to number one, stay current on what technologies are available, making sure as we practice medicine that we also evolve and we also keep up with the newer technologies and just to be able to offer our patients the best that we can.
The imaging is very intuitive. It's very easy to see on fluoroscopy. The markers are easy to visualize and you understand where the PEEK is and what it's doing. The inserter and implant were designed to be a seamless part of MIS TLIFs and PLIFs. The inserter is very low profile, allowing for easy MIS use. The markings were placed, allowing for easy visibility for both open and MIS cases. The surgeon has tremendous control of the implant, despite the low profile nature of the instrument. The implant rotates with great tactile feel without gouging the end plates.
The Porous PEEK technology revolutionizes the implants that I've been using for posterior fusions. The previous implants that I used were smooth, and occasionally I would have an implant back out. And so this new Porous PEEK is phenomenal because it just gets a rigid implantation immediately, and it's a much more stable implant, and I feel much more confident that once implanted, it'll stay there and it'll incorporate rather quickly versus the previous implants that I've been using.
With Pulse's platform's ability to offer multiple modalities within one platform helps further streamline the workflow of our posterior procedures. You have navigation plus integrated intraoperative neuromonitoring to more safely and accurately place screws. LessRay plus navigation to assist with bone work and inner body placement. IGA to measure pelvic parameters and confirm adequate correction intraoperatively. And Bendini to assist in longer construct rod bending. Additionally, we're working hard to develop innovative thoracolumbar posterior specific instruments and inserters that will be compatible with future iterations of Pulse. Here's Mike with the TL anterior innovations.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. And our goals on TL anterior are very similar to what you're doing on the posterior side. What we want to do is meet the clinical needs of our surgeons with innovative product and procedural solutions, and then pair that together with amazing educational programs, all so that we can improve patient care and drive TL anterior procedures forward. To execute on this and ensure we add value in the OR, our procedures are built around some core philosophies. Philosophies like IGA, AMS, and driving surgical efficiencies into the OR by having full procedural solutions. We want to make sure that you have everything you need at your fingertips in order to execute the case for that patient that's on your table. All of this comes together in one comprehensive system, and that system is X360. X360 has allowed us to lead lateral, and now we're really excited to take that to the next level. We want to continue to innovate and continue to launch meaningful products and procedures. And this year, we're excited to do that with the launch of Cohere TLIF and Modulus ALIF. With Cohere TLIF, we're excited to round out a robust AMS portfolio and introduce one of the most innovative and differentiated products into the lateral space, the first and only Porous PEEK implant. With this, along with our Modulus XLIF interbodies, you now have the option to choose between a Porous PEEK or a porous titanium implant for your patients. And that brings me to Modulus ALIF. We are so excited to launch this innovative product into the market because there is nothing else like it in our portfolio. It has midline inserter feature, improved locking mechanisms, and it can be placed in supine or in the lateral position. And when you pair those procedures with this product, along with our best-in-class retractor and the educational courses that we offer, this is quickly propelling us to becoming #1 in global ALIF market share. And this is something we are ecstatic about, and we want to double down on the investment in this space and how quickly we can add value into your practices in the ALIF market. And now we're going to hear from Dr. Drasovic.
Dr. Drasovic, thank you so much for taking the time today to come and talk to us about ALIF and your experiences all behind Modulus ALIF. As a design surgeon on the project, there's many iterations you go through in all of the different labs, and you see this interbody finally come to life.
Mm-hmm.
How has that impacted your practice, and where do you see it going?
One of the really good things about this cage and the surface technology is that in the old days, when we're doing an anterior posterior surgery or an anterior only surgery, the goal was always to try and get bone fusion to heal from one end plate to the other, and in a tall disc space that oftentimes could be really challenging. Now, the analogy that I use to our fellows when I talk about this cage is that it's like a porous coated hip. All you're trying to do now is trying to get the bone to heal onto the pores in the surface of the cage. So in a lot of ways, we've really, I think, dramatically decreased some of the biologic requirements necessary to get stabilization and to get, and help the patient with their clinical symptoms.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. Mm-hmm. Moving into more of the design of the cage itself, we've created this new locking mechanism with the latch lock and the threads. How has that changed, your ALIF?
With this latch lock, it's a nice firm endpoint that tells you when you advance the screw far enough, it's completely unambiguous. You feel a hard stop, and it's kind of a very gratifying. Mechanically, it's a very gratifying feeling. You know exactly when you've fixated the screw properly. One of the real tests of any implant is how quickly the fellows learn to adopt it, as they're kind of early in their learning, in their learning process in terms of becoming a spine surgeon. And our fellows in our fellowship training program just take to this cage immediately and really develop a quick facility with it and really come to love it by the end of the year.
That's great to hear. We want to make sure every type of surgeon, no matter their experience, that they can get the same opportunity, the same experience, and help all different sorts of patients. Mm-hmm. I know that you normally do supine ALIFs. Mm-hmm. Do you see a need, or do you see your practice ever moving to lateral ALIF, or?
Potentially, yeah. One of the cool things about the design team that you guys assembled is that you have a bunch of folks who do supine ALIFs, you have a bunch of people who are doing a lot of lateral ALIFs and single position surgery. And so by putting that team together, we've kind of designed a system that works very, very well for both. It's not just a cage, it's a complete set of disc prep instruments that allow you to do the procedure great from start to finish.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time. You've done such a great job with the team and helping us design this implant that's really going to change patients' lives. So I just want to say thank you for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for including me.
The transformation of Modulus ALIF from where it started to the final design is truly incredible. When we kicked it off a few years ago, the initial thought was to have two separate interbodies, one designed for supine ALIF and one designed for XALIF. Through countless design iterations, the team developed and arrived at a single interbody and instrument suite that was able to accommodate not only 2 patient positions, but also varying anatomy. One of the really unique features we were able to accomplish by 3D printing Modulus ALIF is the locking mechanism. We leverage feedback from our design surgeons in the field about previous ALIF systems and other implant systems currently out there in the market, and ultimately we discovered that through the use of additive manufacturing, we can develop complex features such as the latch lock that would otherwise be extremely difficult and costly to machine using traditional methods. The locking mechanism that we designed for Modulus ALIF includes a flexible tab that we call the latch lock, coupled with some tactile bottom-out threads. What this does is it allows the bolt head to mate with the threads within the inner body to give the surgeons a torque spike as they're bottoming out the bolt. As this is happening, the latch lock deflects out of the way of the passing bolt and then springs back into place. It also acts as a visual confirmation for the surgeon that the bolt is fully captured and contained within the inner body. These 2 features work together in order to give the surgeon ultimate confidence that the bolts are fully seated. Modulus ALIF is more than just an optimized implant with all the features of Modulus technology. It also comes with a full suite of new instrument designs, and I believe that the streamlined instrumentation is really what sets this system apart.
The DNA of NuVasive has always been, and is more than ever today, your clinical training leading to the adoption of our procedures that are designed and built to improve spine surgery, to change the lives of your patients. Our global CPD teams are hyper-focused on proliferating the clinical adoption of our innovation. Technology and procedures like X360, Mass TLIF, C360, Simplify, and Pulse. Our goals and our philosophy are actually very simple. We work to design programs that will lead to sustainable adoption. We want to reduce the learning curve. We want to be efficient and effective with a focus on high quality. It's all about the procedure and not the product. At NuVasive, training is not easy. We'll plan the experience out with you. We're very thoughtful on the structure of our programs. We have the right amount of options to customize our training to what you need. We're going to ask you to prepare. This is not run-of-the-mill industry training. This is education at a higher level. It requires commitment from you, and you have my word that you'll receive ours in return. For 2021, we've rebuilt our curriculum and our schedules. There are ample opportunities around the globe and across our entire portfolio. I'm very proud to say that in 2021, we will train over 1,500 surgeons worldwide. Because of the demand for our procedures, a natural step for us to take was to open our East Coast Experience Center just outside New York City later this summer. It is an amazing facility. It will only increase our position as the best in spine. Wherever you are across the globe, talk to your NuVasive sales teams about the opportunities at hand. We are here to help you provide better care for your patients. We want you to learn alongside your peers, and we want you to grow as a professional more than you ever anticipated. Together, we will continue to change spine surgery. With that, I'll hand it over to my good friend Massimo to close things out.
What a great event! I couldn't be more proud of our team and their efforts. With you today, we highlighted Pulse, an integrated technology platform designed to be used in every spine procedure, the new Simplify disc for the growing cTDR market, and the continuing impact of ACP, paired with our advanced material science technology for ACDF, the new Cohere TLIF-A interbody offering available posterior, and the new Modulus ALIF for both supine and lateral ALIF procedure. We share the same goal with you, to help change more patient lives. As Paul said, our CPD team is here to support you. Please take full advantage of the industry best education. In closing, thank you for being with us tonight, and I look forward to seeing you all very soon.